So in this tutorial, we're going to do an introduction to descriptive statistics, and we're going to do so following these directions here. Now, you could also see we have a ChatGPT link. This will also help you walk through some of these functions and apply it in other places. So the first step we're going to do here is it's asking us to sort our sleep by duration, so minimum to maximum. So what we'll do is we'll press into cell F6, sleep duration. We're going to add a filter, so sort and filter. And right here, we can do filter. So now you can see it has our own little slicer and it asks us to do smallest to largest or min to max. So that's what we'll do first. Now we can put a little X next to that to mark it as complete. So next it's asking us to calculate mean, standard deviation, minimum, maximum, skewness, and kurtosis. So we will put our answers to these in these cells here. Now what we'll do for mean is equals average, and it should pop up. We can then press tab and highlight all of our data. So Control Shift down arrow is how you do the mass highlight, and then you can press enter, and that'll give you a mean value. Now we're going to follow the same steps for the rest of them. And for standard deviation, we're going to do std ev.s. Once again, tab in, and then same thing, Control Shift down arrow, enter, and that'll give us our standard deviation. Now our min and max functions are nice and easy as well. So for this, it's going to be equals min, tab, same steps, press in, Control Shift down arrow, and then enter. Now for max, as you can imagine, it's just going to be equals max, tab, and same step, Control Shift down arrow, enter, and there's our min and max. Now for skew, once again, equals skew, and tab, press in, Control Shift down arrow, enter. Now we have our skew, and lastly, we're going to calculate kurtosis. So this one's going to be equals kurt, and once you type in KU, it should be the only function that pops up. Press enter into cell F7, Control Shift down arrow, and then enter one last time. Now you can see we've calculated all 6 of our descriptive statistics, and we can now go on to step 3. So next we're going to be doing step 3, which is create sleep duration increments. So we're going to go to G, and we could either press here and we could do insert, or it's a little bit easier if you could press in Control Shift plus, and that'll add a new column. So we're going to call this increments. And to do this, we're going to start at 0.1. As we could see, that is our increment value. And what we'll now do is we'll do equals. We'll reference the cell above, and then we'll add 0.1. So that'll be our increment value. So now we could see we have 0.2. And if we drag this down, Control down arrow, then we can do Control D, and you can see that drags our value down. So what we're going to want to do is highlight all the way down to row 106 and Control D. And you could see that brings us all the way to 10, which is exactly what we want. And now we can mark X. So here we're going to calculate the PDF using the norm.dist function. So we can come here and we're going to check off our step from before. And we could see calculate norm dist from increments. So we can come here. We're going to add another column. So press H, Control Shift plus, and that'll add another column. So we're going to come here and we're going to do equals, no, not here. We're going to do PDF here. Here we're going to do equals norm.dist. Now we can tab into it and we could see it's requiring an X, a mean, standard deviation, and then this cumulative function here, which we'll cover after. So first, we're going to want to reference 0.1, our increment, to show our distribution. Next, we can hit comma. Now it's asking for our mean. So we're going to press mean here. Now, what we're going to have to do is, since we're going to drag this function down, we're going to have to do something called an anchor. So we could press F4, or we could just add the dollar signs manually. We can hit a comma. Now, standard deviation, same step. We're going to anchor that as well. One more comma. And now you can see it's asking for true or false. Here, we're going to want to choose false. Now we could tab into that as well. Close the parenthesis and then enter. Now here we could see we have our calculation. Now a nice trick that I personally use, and since we're going to drag this function down, we could do control down arrow, which brings us all the way to the bottom, and put just a little placeholder here, and you'll see why in a second. So we could do control up arrow to go back up. In this cell, shift control down arrow, shift up one, and then control D. That allows you to drag the function all the way down without dragging it all the way down. So this will stop where your last down arrow goes. And now we have our PDF calculated. Now in the next step, we're going to want to plot our results. So we are going to highlight everything we want to plot, and we can include the label. So control shift down arrow. And let's scroll back up. So we're going to go to insert, and we're going to look for bar chart or column. Perfect. So you can see here, these charts we can hover over and we could see what we're going to get with each of them. This one we don't want. We would want something like this to show our distribution. So I will actually keep this one and we could put it right here. So this will allow us to see where our distribution lies. So we could see the peak of it is 0.25. And if we scroll down, we could see around this point is where we're hitting that 0.25, 0.26 area. So in our last step, we calculated the chart, and now we can tick that off with our next. So lastly, it's asking us to calculate norm.in for 10%, 50%, and then 90% margins. So we can simply come here, and we're going to use that function it's specified there. So norm.inv, we can tab into it. We can then highlight our first probability of 10%, comma, our mean, as it's stating here, and then comma one more time, and standard deviation. We can close that parenthesis, but before doing that, we have to anchor these cells. So once again, F4 and F4, or you can manually type in the dollar signs and then press enter. So now we could see we got our value of sleep. We can then drag that down, Control D, and that will give us the calculations for these numbers as well, for these probabilities. So that'll be all for the sheet.